Welcome to the latest webinar presented by the CMT Association. My name is Rick Alber and I co-moderate one of the support groups out here in California. Today's webinar is entitled Parenting with Pleasure, One Mother's Perspective on Parenting a Child with CMT. We're very fortunate to have CMTA Advisory Board member Dr. Elizabeth Meisner here to share her knowledge with us. Before we introduce Dr. Meisner, I'd like to explain how the webinar works. Each of the attendees should see a large window on their screen displaying the first page of Elizabeth's PowerPoint slide presentation. Elizabeth will advance her slides in that window as she speaks. Next to that window, you should see a smaller window displaying Elizabeth's video feed. You can change the size of both of these windows if you wish. You should also see a webinar dashboard window which contains a question area where you can type in questions during the webinar. Following her presentation, Elizabeth will address those questions. You can use the question area to address any concerns about the webinar, such as volume levels, window display problems, or whatever to me while Elizabeth is speaking. The webinar is being recorded and will be archived at the CMTA website at cmtausa.org under the Resources tab on that website's front page. It will take about a week before the recording is uploaded to the site, but once there, you'll be able to see Elizabeth's slides and read a transcript of all that is said during the webinar. The video shown of Elizabeth during the webinar is not recorded and will not be part of the archived recording. Dr. Elizabeth Meisner is a licensed master social worker with New York State. She provides coaching on a wide range of issues such as depression, stress management, and relationships. As a trained social worker, she supports individuals on their journey of self-discovery through self-reflection and goal setting. Among Elizabeth's areas of specialization are helping people to improve relationships, reduce stress, encourage personal growth, and enhance parenting skills, and develop concrete, attainable goals. Dr. Meisner's 9-year-old boy, Ethan, has CMT 1B. With that, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth.
Hello, welcome. My name is Elizabeth Meisner, and today I'm talking about parenting with pleasure, one mother's perspective on parenting a child with CMT. My goal for today is to talk about my own story, where I come from, and what has brought me to this topic, some myths, and then talking about tips and steps and resources and questions. So this slide is a picture of myself, my husband David, who has CMT 1B, Ethan holding our dog Carly, who also is 9.5 with CMT 1B, and my other son Spencer sitting on the fence who does not have CMT. This is just a picture of our family. Just to kind of give you insight, my overall goal is for pleasure. Now, just coming off a week of March spring break or February break last week, it was very apropos that I was trying to do this presentation because it was not such a pleasurable week all the time. So this really helped keep me in a frame of reference of trying to find pleasure even when things can be challenging. You have two boys fighting, two boys going stir crazy. But the goal is for me that I'm always learning, always trying, and always reconnecting with this. But having spent many years, you can see that most of our pictures, they're smiling more often than not. The one picture of Ethan down in the right-hand corner when he was insistent on trying ice skating was one of those experiences that we'd rather he not, because we knew it was not necessarily going to be successful for him. And in his earlier years, I really liked to direct him to do things that I thought he could do well. But he insisted, went on the ice, and it was not a great experience, but he did try, and I give him a lot of credit for that. So my story, you can see my husband David and I here. I have been part of David's family for 27 years. Their family has CMT 1B. And when I first joined his family, I had no idea about CMT. Actually, I look back at the first couple weeks that I met David, I didn't even notice anything about him with CMT. To me, if I look back, I think of his hands as being normal, his gait as being normal. So whether we could argue love makes you blind or I was just not aware, I'm not sure. But then we've been part of his family. He has a mother with CMT, an aunt and an uncle. His grandfather was the first known with CMT who lived well into his ripe old age, still playing golf, so quite an inspiration. And then he has it 3 of his cousins, and now the next generation, my son Ethan was born, he's 9.5 and has CMT1B, and he has a cousin with CMT1B. So that's a little bit of who I am from a personal perspective. I myself do not have it, but also with that, I've been 16 years as a social worker, and I think the social worker side has really helped me to pull together the research, the theories, the practice of what I call this pleasure, and how do I actually find pleasure. And there are theories, approaches, and things that we can actually do to find pleasure, and my goal today is to share those. So once again, this slide is just a picture of Ethan, mostly in Spencer, and you can see up in the right hand corner his lower muscle tone, the core muscle being weaker in him, and you can see in the middle the lovely smile, but actually when you look back you could see his hands were weaker. He did not start walking until 2 years of age. We didn't know for the first 6 months, but then when he started to not meet his milestones, we knew something was up. But in order to get services, we had to have the blood work done for the diagnosis, and we wanted physical therapy for him. So we went ahead, got the blood work done, and found out he did have CMT1B, and we've been doing physical therapy since age 3. Some very good therapists, some not so good, and we've advocated when we're not sure if the therapist really understands the CMT. I'm a big believer that we are the experts for our children, and so to really push forward with that. Before we dive in, just a few myths that I have heard floating around. People with CMT can't live a life full of joy and success. Mostly pain and heartache and physical pain. I disagree with this. I have many role models, and so does Ethan in his life, who their life is full of joy and success, doing what they can do well, not lamenting over the things that they aren't able to do. Be a world athlete for somebody like Ethan. I think that would be his dream, but it won't be a dream that comes true in the normal way, but maybe in other ways. CMT can't be treated. There is no cure right now. That's the amazing thing about the STAR research. They are working on finding cures, but there are things that we can do to help people with CMT, such as physical therapy, such as bracing, such as eating, sleeping. So there are things that we can do to prolong and make things easier on different levels. CMT is all that it is about. For my approach as a social worker, I deal a lot with people who have anxiety and depression, and we used to see these people as, depressed Mrs. Smith, for example. Now we know that that's only one slice of the person, and so is the CMT. My son is Ethan with lots of dimensions to him. CMT is one of those, but there are also lots of other things. So I see that you have a person that has an element, and this affects multiple layers of their life, but it's not all that it's about. Now to kind of move into the framework that I use each day, this idea of connecting, creating, changing, which leads to pleasure. I'm not aiming for 100% pleasure. I think that would be unattainable in any day, but I am aiming for 50% of the day to be pleasurable and enjoyable. My main job is to be a parent, and since I'm spending 24/7 doing that, I want enjoyment out of it. That's a choice that I'm approaching each day with. Definitely some days go better than others. Someday, I have to admit, finding pleasure can be a real struggle, and other days it just flows naturally. So what do I mean by each of these words? This is what I talk about: connecting, creating, and changing. Specifically, connecting. This is when, as parents, we can be present, what we call affect attunement and being a mirror. I'm a big believer that our children mirror what we are feeling, even if we aren't sure that they're mirroring us. When we look at them and we focus on their struggles, or we are frustrated, they mirror our frustrations. So this is where I really think it's important that we have our issues or our heartaches, our disappointments about our child or loved one with CMT, but when we're focused with them, we need to kind of put that aside and be present to be with them. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? I think it's really good to go to that dark place. I think I've shared an article I wrote for the CMTA that couple times, more than I can probably reflect, I've gone to that really bad place. I put myself in a car. Ethan, a part of the CMT we found is scoliosis. So with Ethan, we were proactive. My husband has scoliosis and had to have surgery, but with Ethan, we're trying to be proactive. So we took him for an x-ray of his back, and they said he was at a certain degree that was kind of getting close, but considered low scoliosis. I'm not sure the proper terminology. I remember dropping him off at school, and I remember just getting into my car and just really crying, going there, saying, this actually, sorry, it makes me emotional even now, going there and saying, this is not what I want, this is not what I would have chosen, this anger, frustration, getting it all out. I think I was even yelling in my car if anybody walked by, and really just did that for probably a good 15-20 minutes until I was exhausted. And then I was able to go there, move through, and now I'm focused for him. So now being, what can we do to help with his scoliosis? We can do certain stretching. We can help him stand up straight. We were told to get him, he likes to do electronics games. So we were told to get him a Wii board that he has to stand up and, become more centered. So really, I think as parents, we need to go to what am I thinking? What am I feeling? Go to that darkest place and then come through it and then be focused for our children. So stop, breathe, and focus on our breathing, which allows us to connect where they are instead of them having to pick up on our emotions. Creating, this is where I'm a big believer, and I've practiced in my own life myself and with my clients. Set your intentions, set your goal. What kind of parent do I want to be? I have chosen this year to, this month, to me these change all the time. I want to inspire my children and the people around me to be the best they can be, whatever that means to them. I want love in our family and around me. I want peace. I love it on a Saturday when we're just all hanging out and it's very peaceful, kind of just, being. I want joy, happy, and optimistic. So, with these ideas in mind, I approach each day trying to get there. So this morning, getting ready to get the boys to school, which is always a struggle. I mean, Ethan is slower at getting his braces on, but 9.5, I really try to push him to be independent, which can lead to a lot of struggles between us. I'm trying to create that independence in him, which is not always as easy. So I found myself that he was behind schedule. I set the timer, he hadn't listened to the timer. And so I was getting frustrated, and I start to spew when I get frustrated. And I checked with myself, is this creating a peaceful morning to get to school? No. So instead of spewing at him, I just shut down. I spew in my head, but I keep it all to myself. I left, I walked out of the house, went into the car, got in, turned on the radio really loud. Within 30 seconds, I was back down, came back in and said, okay, Ethan, what can we do to get you out faster? So it's those kind of things of setting goals and, that I have the choice in how I think and respond to the event. So the example of him getting ready for school this morning, I make the choice that I want him to be as independent as he can and trying to set that up. But I also, when I get frustrated with him, I need to realize that that's my frustration and I don't want him to pick up on that frustration. So that's where I really struggle all the time. To make sure that when he is frustrated, I can really be centered for him, which is much easier said than done. I try to do my best in each moment, and that's all I think any of us can do. There have been many mornings where I have gotten frustrated that it hasn't gone well, or that something takes longer, or that, Ethan, I have to tell him one more time to stand up straight, or whatever it may be with any of us. And at the end of the day, I have to go back and think about, okay, what did I do that was my best and how can I grow upon that instead of beating myself up for all the things that I did that I wish I hadn't done. So to me, it's this, reflecting on the day, reflecting on the incidents, and then moving forward. So that's connecting and creating, and then changing. I'm a big believer, and a lot of the research shows that gratitude, being grateful for the small things in life, can help us change our neural network in our brain to help us see more of the gratitude instead of seeing the things that aren't going well. So, this might sound really bizarre, but I was telling Ethan the other day, we're very honest and talk about his surgery a lot, and was saying, I was really grateful that his surgery had given us a month together. It was, ideally, I'd rather have a month together on the beach in Florida, but it was a month together. He was home with me. I really was in the moment with him, having no idea what would come next. And I have to actually say it was probably one of the most unbelievable months we had together, even with his pain, even with his struggles, even with, feeling like it was just overwhelming. It was a gift in a strange way. So we spend a lot of time focusing on, what are you grateful for today? And it's as small as a cup of coffee, or as small as getting out of the door on time, to as big as, having love in our lives. So just really focusing on the gratitude instead of the heartache. So I know I've read in a lot of people's posts on Facebook that, a lot of our kids struggle at school, struggle with their friends, they're struggling. And I know it's hard to get out of that rut and really focus on what are they doing well. And I know, for example, Ethan, he loves to read and he loves to draw. So, we really try to push that with him. Does he love to play soccer? Yes, but I'm not going to put him on a soccer team. We'll play it in the backyard, and that's kind of really being grateful that he can kick a ball at this point and run around, or not really running, but walking, and working from there. So I know it's hard to shift our perspective. I spent many years learning about this from a theoretical perspective, but I know how it works. I can see it in my clients, this awareness of our current feelings and making the choices of, do I want to be here? Do I want to be miserable, or do I want to try to make the best out of something that is really not what we would have chosen? So connecting heart to heart is, I know it sounds like a lot, but really it comes down to these ideas of being present with our children. So first of all, seeing them when they're crying, that we can cry with them or just hug them. When they're angry, we can put words to that anger. So first of all, we're looking at them. How are they doing? It's about them, though, not about us. Secondly, we're hearing them. When they're talking about their frustrations or talking about the things that are going well, we grow on both of those. We talk about these things. We don't shy away from them. And thirdly, heart to heart, that we feel in our hearts the emotion that reflects with them and what they feel in their heart. So when they are hurting, when Ethan has his frustration and is crying, I'm there with him. I hug him. Sometimes I'll even cry. And then we move on to the next thing. We don't get stuck there. And it's the getting stuck there that can be hard. But I'm a big believer that if we don't talk about these hardships with our kids, we don't get to the joy or to the pleasure. And it's a real balance. So some of my biggest guidances have been what I've learned, but also some books like The Four Agreement. And this is a book that you can find anywhere, but if you come from these four agreements, it really helps. And I struggle with this every day, or I should say I'm learning with this every day. Be impeccable with your words. This is what I was just telling you, like this morning, starting to get really frustrated, starting to yell at Ethan and say, come on, you never get ready on time. And I'm thinking, am I being impeccable with my words? No, be quiet. Don't take anything personally. When Ethan goes to that place of anger or frustration, it's not about me. A lot of the times he can lash out at me, but it's not about me. So I don't take it personally, so I can still connect with him. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best. So with Ethan, or with Dave, when they're talking about something or appear to be frustrated, I won't make the assumption. I'll check in with them. Are you frustrated? I'll say to Ethan right now that you can't write as well in school. And he'll be saying yes. And I'll say, well, let's fix it. Let's work on it. Let's go buy you a certain pencil. Let's keep trying and trying and trying. So we keep trying, and something works for a month. We have to redo something later. Always do your best. I think we need to give ourselves space that we're always just trying to do our best. And that's kind of where we function from.
So another approach that's really worked, I find, is the problems. And in our family, there are a lot of them, and it's really trying to be an investigator. So get down to the bottom of the problem, because then we can take action. And I'm a big believer that if we can take action, we don't feel hopeless or helpless. So like yesterday with Ethan not wanting to take the walker, instead of fighting with him over it, I stepped aside and tried to figure out what was the real issue, and it was that he was worried he was going to be exhausted. So that I could understand. So then we set goals, did multiple solutions, and came up with an action. So instead of us ruining our day because we were fighting, him thinking I was disappointed, me being mad that he wasn't pushing himself, we got to a much better thing and the day came out much better. So the last one is I had talked in the little blurb about things that we can do to train our brains to see the strength in things. This comes from the movement of positive psychology, which I'll give you a website at the end if you have more interest in learning about this. But basically what they have shown through research is if every day we document, we talk about 3 things that you're grateful for that day, we start to see the positives in life. So this can be as small as a good cup of coffee in the morning, a smile, the sunshine, you know, the bird in the tree. It doesn't have to be massive, big things. It can just be small things that we're grateful. So I do practice this every day with the boys, and I practice it kind of in a hidden way, but more kind of a, you know, what went well today? Where did you do things that were good for you? They talk about journaling. I'm not a big journaler. Ethan actually did journal through his surgery, and I think that really helped him. He was able to kind of express how he felt, and it wasn't my idea. He picked it up himself, but it really did work for him. But the belief is if we journal, we're then imprinting in our brain what went well and focusing on that. Another thing that research has shown is being physically active. To me, this doesn't mean, you know, running or doing things that might be more challenging, but what we have found is just getting out, just doing something that, you know, whether it's walking around the cul-de-sac, you know, just doing a little bit of physical activity really helps. Random act of kindness gets us out of ourselves, so it gets us thinking about someone else. It was interesting, Ethan being in a wheelchair, his perception of how hard life is for people in wheelchairs really made him want to act on doing things to make it easier. He realized, you know, opening doors when we got a lot of snow this winter and they wouldn't shovel the walkway the right way. So kind of that idea of him wanting to do something to help other people. So meditation, if we have the time, the research shows that 5 minutes of meditation gets our brain waves getting to a better spot so we can handle the stressors that come along with being a parent or, you know, the added of a CMT. So just kind of to summarize in reflection, I'm a believer that we are the experts on our children. We have been to a lot of doctors, a lot of medical appointments. I'm not saying I know what is the best surgery for my child, but I know when we went down this road of surgery that I knew what kind of hospital I wanted. I knew what kind of feeling I wanted from my doctor, and it took us a while to find that. So, you know, asking a lot of questions, gathering a lot of facts. For us, physical therapy has been really important, and we had to advocate for this, especially after his surgery. We were sent home with him in a wheelchair for 6 weeks, and within 4 days his hamstrings tightened up. With the CMT1B, the hamstrings are especially tight for Ethan, and we really need to work on that. If we hadn't done that, I'm not sure he'd be walking right now. We also have advocated for physical therapy after surgery. Our doctors didn't tell us that. We advocated for that. One thing that went wrong for us, just I think if we also share what hasn't worked can really help us. Ethan was wearing braces really well from like 3 to 6. Then he developed a plantar's wart, and I wasn't on the ball to get it fixed. So the plantar's wart got worse and worse, which made his braces get more challenging to wear, and eventually he wasn't wearing them anymore. And eventually after 6 months of treatment, we got rid of the plantar's wart, but by that time we had lost him seeing the braces as normal. So we were not able to get him back into braces, where is why we ended up then having to go down the surgery route so much faster, because his feet, because of a combination of David's CMT genes and my genes, really his arches got way too high and he was having pain. Another reflection is focusing on what we do well. So I don't know about you, but for me, there are a lot of struggles that come with CMT. Finger strength, you know, Ethan's writing is terrible. It's very messy, but his way of thinking is amazing. So he does much better typing on a computer and working with the school to acknowledge that. They still want him to learn writing, but that's not the real focus. He's an excellent drawer. So focusing on things that he does really well. He would love to play soccer, but he's not a runner. He's really good at riding his bike, so we do a lot of that. And really focusing on those strengths versus where they fall down. Things that have worked for us and we have learned about from many of our doctors: swimming, one of the best activities. Sometimes I wish we lived in a warmer climate because we could walk, we could swim. When he starts swimming in June, and by the end of August, his strength is unbelievably different. So swimming is huge. Taekwondo, he has gotten into and loved for his core strength. That has been a real benefit, not something that I ever thought would work, but it sure did. Wii games, our neurosurgeon told us that Wii games, the ones where they stand up, are the best for especially somebody like Ethan with a peripheral, because it helps build that in while he's having fun. So we have tried to find doing things that have fun to build on that. But one of the biggest things that have worked for me is connecting with other people with CMT. So through the CMTA Association, what got me through the surgery was talking to other mothers and other fathers and other parents who had been through it, what they had worked for them, not worked for them. So the more I think we connect as a group, the more we don't feel isolated, and the more we can work through, moving towards it being more pleasurable than frustration and getting stuck in all of that. There are some amazing resources, just in case you're not aware, through the CMTA under the Resource Center. There are articles for parents. There are videos on teaching kids about CMT. There's a CMT guide. One of the most important things for us is the medication list. We took this, I take this all the time to all the doctor appointments, and when Ethan had his surgery, they actually changed the anesthetic to put him asleep based on that list. So really encourage you to make sure all the physicians have that. One of the best things we ever did was the school program with Gina. I Step It Up for CMT. Ethan is in a school where they have grade 1 to grade 5 together, and there are about 24 students, and she came in and did a presentation talking about CMT because we knew the surgery was coming up. We wanted people to be aware of it. It was actually Ethan's proudest moment, and his pride in having CMT was unbelievable. So I would highly encourage, maybe something along that line. Facebook, there's a parent page, which I just joined and have been reading people's posts. And to me, there's nothing more connecting than to read another parent posting about what went well and about their struggles. And I'm like, I'm not alone, there are other ones. So here are some other resources that are just independent that I have found really helpful. Some websites. And I think that's it for my presentation. Just a few more pictures. The one over here was the day that Ethan was going back for his second surgery, and he was even smiling that day. So he had actually just had a real meltdown, but we had turned it around and he was smiling on his way into a second surgery day. So in wrapping up, I appreciate you all listening. It feels like a void since there's no interacting, but I hope that at some level something I have said and your own stories can connect, inspire, and encourage all of us to find pleasure in something that can sometimes be very challenging, sometimes is very challenging, but there's such an upside, and this is Ethan on one of his upsides, which to me is what it is all about. So I guess, Rick, will open it up if anybody has any questions, if they wanted to raise their hand, or I can move on to, if nobody does, to the questions that were sent in.
Well, we've had some questions submitted during your presentation.
Oh, good. You can see I'm not very good at multitasking, so go ahead.
Okay. Well, first let me say thank you very much, Elizabeth. That was a terrific presentation. You covered so much in such a clear manner, and your honesty and the details you gave about your challenges and Ethan's, it was just, at least for me, totally rewarding. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One person had a comment and said, I love your energy. I see that you're using the 4 Agreements, which is my favorite book. Thank you very much for reminding me.
Oh, thank you. I love hearing that. Gives me chills. Excellent.
Another person asked about pain and said, I have a question about pain. Does your husband or Ethan experience much pain related to CMT?
Yeah, and this is where I would love if the people who feel comfortable, would raise their hand and allow Rick to allow you to talk if you want to, because I think that would be beneficial. But if not, I will just dive in. I think what we have found is there are different levels of pain from going to a lot of these CMT events. And on the continuum of pain, I would say we're very fortunate that the pain level is low. From what I've experienced. But with that said, yes, there's pain. Weather changing, David's hands, and not so much Ethan yet, but David's hands get painful. So I think that our climate change can be hard. But the day-to-day, the only pain that Ethan has is from wearing his braces, that can add pain. So I think the level of continual pain, no. Now, what I have done, I'm a big believer in homeopathic medicine, and of course, none of this is medical advice, but with Ethan's surgery, there was a nerve pain that I used by this company called Bjorn, and if you want more information, I can email it to you, but it really helped him. And I don't know if it was the placebo effect, because he was taking these, it's a sugar pill, really, but it took away a lot of his pain that he was complaining of. So I don't know if that answers that person's question or if they wanted to engage at all.
Well, as Elizabeth said, you can, in effect, raise your hand by clicking on the little box that or icon that looks like a hand in the attendees window on your screen. I hope everybody's seeing that. And if you do that, I will unmute you and you can address Elizabeth by voice. Another person asked about whether the presentation was being recorded and whether there would be a listing of the URLs and the resources that you mentioned during the presentation. And I can answer that one. We have recorded the presentation. We'll have it up on the CMT website in the section marked webinars. That should be up there in about a week from now. You'll be able to view the slides and hear Elizabeth's presentation. I don't believe we'll be able to see the nice images of Elizabeth in the video screen, but everything else will be available. Thanks for putting up the screen again with the links to the resources. Another question was about Ethan. It said, how did Ethan's reconstruction come out? Do the doctors feel that it will continue to help him, or do they believe the curling of his hands will come back?
Yeah, and I appreciate that question. Both of his feet, his right foot was much more deformed than his left foot. So his right foot, he was actually walking on the outside of his foot, and his ankle bone had moved out. So the surgery was a two-step process, which I was always against. I wanted it done in one step, but all of the physicians we talked to, they all recommended the two-step, so we went that way. My biggest fear was he wouldn't go back in for the second surgery, but that fear actually didn't happen. Shriners was so exceptional at pain management and at working at making it a good experience. They give him a prize there, which surprisingly worked really well. They gave him some iTunes gift cards, which was just amazing, so he was happy to go back. Now he hates Shriners, and I don't know if he'll ever go back, but that was more from a cast being put on again. So the left foot looks great, and I think the left foot went really well. The right foot, we are still struggling to get it, the heel in alignment. It is still, the surgery went, I think, well as could be from what the doctor said. But David, my husband, is an orthotist, so he's been working hard to get them in right position. So we are now, the last surgery was December 17th, so we are now, almost 2 months out. And do I think it was the right decision as of today? Yes, I know it was the right decision. And, where will we be a year from now? My hope is that he has none of that pain that he had before he went into surgery. And his feet have gone from the size 13 child to a size 3. So for the 9-and-a-half-year-old, even that was just major. So they were not growing out, they were growing up. So as of today, I think it's successful. When we go back to the doctor in 6 weeks, I can give another update. So, and will it be permanent? I don't know. That's the unknown with CMT and the 1B, whether he eventually will need to have more surgery. But as I keep saying, when he's a young adult, he can then make the decision for himself, whether he wants to or not. So,
Thanks for that answer, Elizabeth. We do have a question from Bonnie, who I will now unmute. And Bonnie, if you'll go ahead and address Elizabeth, that would be great.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Great. I have a daughter who is 10 who has CMT 1B. We adopted her from China when she was almost 4 and she couldn't walk, and now she's walking around with braces and doing well. But one of the things we've noticed is that she has increasing weakness of her hands, and that's a problem in school in 4th grade where she can't keep up with the writing assignments.
Right.
So the teachers have made accommodations for her and have printed out handouts and have different requirements for her in terms of, written work. But at some point in the very near future, she's going to need to move on to something else. So I had a specific question in terms of kiddos that have hand fatigue and can't keep up with writing assignments in school. Do you suggest moving to a keyboard? And if so, is there a certain type, brand, or model? Or do you just recommend jumping directly to voice-activated software? Because hand fatigue is hand fatigue, whether it's handwriting or a keyboard.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question. And first of all, I think it's amazing that you were all able to pick up on the fatigue, because what I find is a lot of the times these struggles first present as like a behavioral. So the child either doesn't like school, they don't like writing anymore. So the fact that you got to the issue and are doing something is amazing. So congratulations to you and your school for that. When it comes to adaptive technology, it's not an area I'm an expertise. I know for Ethan what is working is they still want him to write, and we have a lot of standardized testing, which I dread. So he gets like extra time, which is how they accommodate, and I argue that that doesn't accommodate for the fatigue. An extra 20 minutes just means he's more exhausted. So we have been pushing for him to use the computer, and he is using that a lot more and loving it. So his writing has taken off. I would recommend going right to the voice activated if it works for her. I mean, this is where we're going to be in the future. So I think, as I said, I think you're the best advocate for her. So I would push for it. If she can do the computer for a little bit, why not try it and then push for the voice activated?
Thank you. Appreciate that. May I ask one more quick question?
Yes.
Sure.
All right. So in something like with CMT where kiddos really do benefit from these multidisciplinary teams, do you feel that it is advantageous for children, all children with CMT at some point or on an ongoing basis, to be followed by one of the, real experts who have these, multidisciplinary teams with PT, OT, geneticists, orthotists, all those, or do you think that your sort of average pediatric neurologist can follow most kiddos with CMT?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. I apologize for the background noise. My computer in my private room was giving me problems, so I apologize for the telephone and answering machine. Another area that I'm not an expert, and I can just share from my own personal experience. So, just to let you know, I don't know what an expert would say or what Dr. Shai, who would be more of an expert. From my opinion, I think, getting as much information as we can when issues are going on is really important. I think an awareness as a parent as to, what might be coming down the road, and how do we kind of deal with that. So I guess my answer is our son does not see somebody every year. We go to his primary care who knows he has CMT. We do go to a back specialist because scoliosis is correlated with CMT, especially the 1B. So his dad has it, and I'm worried that he'll get it. So that's the other person we follow up with. But that's it. Otherwise, we've been to Dr. Shai once, had a baseline, but we don't see any so-called other specialists. Is that kind of answer your question, Bonnie?
Yes, it does, because I have found that I'm a physician myself, but not a neurologist, and I found that in the area in which we live, while there are a plethora of doctors and wonderful health centers, there is no expertise in childhood neuromuscular diseases. And having gone to a couple of the experts, Shy and Finkel, their team approach and their knowledge was so far beyond what was available locally. And I just wondered, for long term, is this what we haven't connected with other families with CMT, and I didn't know whether, less than 10% of families go to a so-called expert, or all families do at some point, but there just seems to be a real disparity in terms of knowledge.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, and I mean, obviously having your background, I would say you are the expert because you know how to find the research and then where you would end up. We even found this with our doctor who did the foot surgery. He has worked with CMT and he's a pediatric specialist, but when it came to aftercare, like the physical therapy, he didn't know what Dave knew from his own experiences and from having CMT. So I think that's where, we need to push ourselves to know what our children are saying to us, whether it's pain, whether it's discomfort, and then know where to get that information. So I think you're right, there's a real need for more of these centers of excellence where we can go and the physical therapy totally understands CMT. So I think it's a really good point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. We also had a question come in about how to identify CMT, and I don't think this is your area of expertise necessarily, Elizabeth, but I think that I can say something quickly about that. On the CMTA website, there's quite a bit of information about how to identify or ascertain that a person has CMT, and then to identify the variant of CMT that they have. And generally it comes down to EMG tests in a doctor's office, which are kind of crude, but will in many cases identify CMT in general. There's also now genetic tests that are available from Athena Diagnostics and perhaps some other services that through simple blood tests can identify the variant of CMT and are quite accurate, although they may or may not be covered by insurance. It varies from insurance company to insurance company. Do you have anything else to add to that, Elizabeth, or is that?
No, I think that was one of the questions that came in. With Ethan, we did not have the EMG done. We went to Dr. Shai's clinic, and he saw his dad do it, and saw his dad looked like he was in so much discomfort that he wasn't going to do it. But we had already had the blood work done to know that he was CMT type 1B. And what we were advised, too, is because we knew the strand that his dad had and his family had, to just test for that one strand. So that's where we went. I know sometimes a lot of people, like Spencer, our other son, who doesn't have it, we have not had him tested. But in Dave's family, the type 1B shows itself. It doesn't lay dormant. So Spencer's on the total opposite end of the spectrum of Ethan when it comes to strength, and is walking at 8 months versus the 2 years. So we're not going to have him genetically tested to rule it out just because we feel that he pretty much doesn't have it. So, and I think the other question that came in was about CMT type 2, can it be cured, and the STAR treatment. And at this point, the CMT STAR research program is being done on type 2A and 2C. And as of now, there is no cure, but it's working hard with a lot of the top scientists and top researchers to find a treatment. And I think every day they're getting closer and closer. And I think this is what is so exciting about the CMTA, is they have both sides. They have this side where we get to meet with families and people, and they have the research side. So just to address that question. And Rick, were there any, I know there was one that came in before about a balancing dog. I do not have any experience with this, so I would love if anybody else does, if they could put it in the chat to share or raise their hand, because this is not something I know anything about, but seems really interesting. And I know we have friends who have dogs for diabetes, but I hadn't heard about this, so I thought that is kind of interesting. So anybody who does have information, if they could share that, that would be great too.
Another question that just came in has to do with finding strengths. I think it's more of a comment. Let me read it. It says, wonderful presentation. Thank you, Elizabeth. My son has CMT even worse than Ethan. We don't have a type yet. He has no fine motor skills left and is able to walk only with a lot of assistance. We have a hard time finding his strengths, and so does he.
Yeah. And and how do we do it? I agree it can be challenging, and I remember, just as a side story, and I'll come back to this, I went to one of our local meetings and we had a woman there who was really struggling. She was an artist with CMT and she was really struggling also to find her strengths. And where I come from is so basic. I remember talking to her and saying, look, your strength is that you made it today. Your strength is if you do one chore a day. For her, she was feeling that she wasn't getting enough accomplished each day. And she walked away and emailed me later and said, you know what, I've never thought about it that way. So I can hear the struggle and that he is worse than Ethan. And the fact that he can still, make 5 steps, to me that is a strength. Does he smile at all? Is he able to smile? And if he is, maybe that's another strength. I think if we focus too much on what we can't do, and I know from my own experience with Ethan, I think he really sees himself as a world elite athlete, and he's not. But we try to shift his focus away from that because I'm afraid that if we, go down that road of soccer, baseball, basketball, that he will become tarnished and he'll become bitter. So in a way, as a parent, we've protected him, as I feel we're allowed to up until a certain age, keeping him to swimming and things that he can do. So that's how I try to highlight his strength. In our family, his strength is that he's peaceful, that he sits and he's not running around like a crazy Roundup top. So in our family, the big joke is, that Dave and Ethan have CMT and Spencer and I can't eat junk food because we gain a lot of weight. So as Ethan says, sometimes CMT is better than what Spencer and I struggle with. So in our family, we've acknowledged that we all have struggles. Some we just see on the outside and some we don't. So I don't know if that helps with that question, but if you want more on finding strengths, please email me. And, the more that we can talk, the more that I could help you focus on them and reframe. So my email address I'll put back up at the end, and I would love it if you email and we could, talk about it more. So hope that helps a little bit.
You might want to state your email address just for people that hear the presentation but don't have the video.
Okay. It is emisener@gmail.com. So that's the initial E for Elizabeth, and my last name, misener@gmail.com. emeisner@gmail.com. So feel free to email me anything. To me, it's a win-win because I get to meet more people who are parents of children with CMT, so it doesn't feel so isolating. And I think the more we support each other, the easier it is to get through all of the challenges that we're facing.
One final question came in, and it has to do with curcumin. The question is, could you comment on curcumin as a possible treatment for CMT, especially type 1B? And I'm sure this is outside your area of expertise. Curcumin is a spice, of course.
Oh, okay, yes, we use it all the time. I don't know if it works or not, but we cook with it, and I hide it in spaghetti sauce, and so, I'm a big believer in if it doesn't hurt you, it can only help you. So that's why I've done a lot of alternative routes like the homeopath, using those kind of spices, and because I don't think they don't hurt you, and hopefully they can help. So does it, from a scientific perspective, I don't know. From a personal perspective, we really like it.
There's quite a bit of anecdotal evidence or reports from people saying that, they were very much improved by adding quite a bit of curcumin to their diet. And I agree with Elizabeth completely. If it doesn't hurt, go ahead and do it. If it's not making a big difference, you shouldn't keep up with it. So.
Yeah. And I think also there was one last question that came in by email that I saved for last because, boy, did I relate to this one. And it was by a parent who has two girls, 6 and 8, and the older girl has issues getting, from what I read, getting things done, and the younger one not so much. And the parent talking about reinforcing their independence, but how terrible we can sometimes feel to make them do things that don't come easily. And this really stood out to me because this is where I think I struggle the most. I want life to be easier than it is, so I'm the one that would love to tie up the shoes, would love to do up the coats, you know, and probably have done it older than most kids would. But at some point, I do think that that way that we feel horrible at making somebody push themselves is more about us than them, because I have found with Ethan that the more he believes in himself and can do things, the better he does. But he does not do well with tie-up shoes, so we tend to get Velcro, or we tend to do something that works for him better than that. Pants, we do not have a pair of pants for him that has a button on it because he can't do it and he won't wear them. You know, he loves sweatpants, which I hate, but they work for him, and I'd rather it work for him than, you know, having him look dressy. So I totally relate to that, you know, that fine line of independence versus suffering, and I think it is a fine line. So I appreciate that reflection from that parent.
Well, thank you very much, Elizabeth. This is, as I said before, been just a wonderful webinar presentation that you've put together for us, and we thank you so much for your time and attention to this, and wish you the best for both you and Ethan. As I earlier went over, we will get the video and the recording of this up on the CMTA website under the webinar listing within a week or so, and you're welcome to come back, view it again, listen to it, pass along the URL link to anybody else who can benefit from it that wasn't able to attend today. And again, I'd just like to thank you, Elizabeth, for taking the time and effort and sharing so much great information with us.
Excellent. Well, and I thank everybody for showing and spending their time, and I hope if you get one more minute of pleasure in your day of parenting, that, you know, that's what I wish for everybody. So please email me if you have any questions or comments or reflections, and I would love it if we could continue, you know, on the Facebook page, supporting each other and connecting. I would love for our kids to connect more. That's something that I still struggle with, is Ethan having peers that he can relate to that have CMT too. So I see a lot of future areas that we can continue to develop. So thank you, Rick, and thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.